Because now's the day when we can start to see some how to vote cards and where some preferences are going to go here. And if preferences flow the way that they did in 2019, the government can be returned. If they don't, then we get Albo as Prime Minister. Clive Palmer joins us now from the beautiful Gold Coast. Nice to see you, mate. How are you?
Good, Paul. How are you?
Very good. So, a couple of leaks, a couple of suggestions here and there that your preferences are going to favour the Liberal Party over the Labor Party in marginal seats. Let's put this records straight. What are you doing with your preferences?
Well, first up in the Senate, we're preferencing all of the Freedom parties and others. There's no preferences at all given to the Liberal, Labor or the Greens. So in every state of the Commonwealth of Australia, on our preference card, you only have to number 6 squares and there will be no Liberals, there'll be no Labor, there'll be no Greens. Preferences are really just a recommendation. Anyway, we know at the last election, One Nation, only 50% of people followed their preferences. But in Western Australia, it's incredible. The Liberal Party has preferenced the Labor Party over the United Australia Party. And the Labor Party has preferenced the Liberal Party directly over the United Australia Party. The same thing's happened in 6 seats in New South Wales, where the Liberal Party is preferencing Labor and Labor's preferring the Liberal Party, and 1 seat in Queensland. So in Western Australia, we've decided to put every sitting member last, which means the Liberal Party has 10 sitting members and they'll all be last on our card, and the Labor Party has 5 sitting members and they'll all be last on our card. And this is to show and to stop this sort of behaviour where both of our parties in a Westminster system should be opposed to us, but instead they're ganging up together to defeat democracy. Right across the nation, there's be less than 10 Liberal or Labor candidates in a number 2 or 3 position on our card. All of them will be down the bottom of the ticket. And this is basically because we think the Liberal Party, Labor Party and the Greens have deserted Australians at the last term of government. We're also placing last Mr Albanese in his seat, Mr Morrison in his seat, and Adam Bandt in his seat in Melbourne. So when you do get down to it, there are other major Liberals too that have been placed at the bottom of the ticket, such as Peter Dutton in Queensland and Trent Zimmerman. So it's very difficult to know. There are some Liberal people, such as Lou in Wide Bay, who's crossed the floor with Craig Kelly to introduce a bill, who showed great courage. He's been preference number 2. And there are some other Liberals that are very favourable to our policies that we've also preferenced highly, and some members of the Labor Party. But it's about, if you look at who's higher between Labor and Liberals, it's about 45% Labor and about 55% Liberals. But we don't want any of them. We want Craig Kelly to be Prime Minister.
Well, that's the thing. So obviously the assumption in the question I ask here, taken as given, that you want UAP first. But can you tell me where you have ranked Liberal and Labor in a couple of seats around the country? All right, I want to talk about the most marginal, where theoretically your preferences, if people follow them, can help determine an outcome. What are you going to do in the seat of Bass, currently held by the Liberals just?
Well, I haven't got the card with me, Paul, tonight, so I really can't give you the exact seat-by-seat blow. I'm looking at the overall situation, and the overall situation, as I said, shows about 45% of Labor above Liberals and about 55% of Liberals above Labor. But of course, in Western Australia, there will be 10 Liberals that will be at last on our ticket because of them preferencing the Labor Party.
So do you agree with my theory about what I said here, that if preference discipline holds for the Conservative side of politics, it's more likely to hurt the Labor Party? Is your sense that even though the primary vote of the Liberal Party is down, goes to people like yourself, goes to people like Pauline Hanson, goes to people like the Liberal Democrats, that if those people who vote for you end up putting Liberal ahead of Labor, wherever that happens to be it second or 22nd in a field of 24, that's going to help the government?
Well, I think the assumptions are going to be looked at. If we take Pauline Hanson's party, for example, she's preferenced Labor all throughout Tasmania. Only in 1 seat of Braddon has she given a preference to the Liberal Party. So Pauline's preferencing Labor there. If we come back to Sydney, she said that she's going to get rid of the 5 Liberals and do Morrison a favour and be preferencing against them in 5 of the major seats in Sydney, including Trent Zimmerman in North Sydney. Of course, we've put Trent Zimmerman at the bottom as well because he's preferenced the Labor Party over the Liberal Party, over our party. And it's terrible that the Liberal Party is preferencing Labor and Labor is preferencing him over our candidate. It's a real attempt to deny the Australian people a proper democracy.
So last question, in places that are considered to be hardcore Labor areas or say suburban areas of Western Sydney or out of Melbourne, what are you doing there? Do you think that the party is, as the Age suggested today, surging in places like Victoria?
Well, I can only look at our membership, and our membership certainly surged in the western suburbs of Melbourne and the western suburbs of Sydney. And one of our polls that we did in Bill Shorten's seat showed that our preferences would be crucial in allowing him to hold or lose that seat, and it was most likely to lose that seat. Of course, there's a lot of resentment to the Labor Party about the world's longest lockdown in Victoria, and Craig Kelly showed extraordinary courage to campaign in Victoria with hundreds of thousands of Australians against the injustices that was done to that society. So I've got every expectation that Labor seats will fall in western suburbs of Melbourne, likewise in the western suburbs of Sydney, because there's a strong revolt against this sort of behaviour and a strong positive movement towards freedom in this country.
I agree. Good on you, Clive. Nice to talk to you, mate. Give me a round of applause here in Tamworth. All the best on the Gold Coast.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for breaking that news for us tonight.